Ask heaven what to be, not what to do. Because a true being always knows what to do with himself, with herself. That's the question you have constantly, isn't it? What should I do with today, with the next hour? What should I do with that dilemma down at my work? How shall I be the kind of a person who can handle all the crises and difficulties? You're asking essentially how you can do something that will turn out to be favorable, good for you. Now, try some deep thinking right now about your inquiry. You're asking, how can I make the right decision? How can I select the course that's going to give me maximum security and happiness? You've asked a dreadfully wrong question. You've started off with the assumption that there is an I there, a person there, an entity there who can know what to do when there is no such person there at all. So if you reverse things and you ask, what should I be? Already you've smashed the tyranny of what should I do? What kind of a person should I be? You're reflecting, what kind of a person should I be that is able to do, act, choose what is right? Now you're on to it, and now you are in for it. You're in for it in a way you've never allowed yourself to be before. You are sensing what I'm talking about. Oh, what an answer you're going to get when you answer, who should I be in reality? And the first thing, if your heart is right, the first thing that will leap out and get you by the collar and shake you up is the fact that you can't any longer be the person who asks, screams out, what should I do? You can't be that. You're finding out what you can't be, not what you should be in your own estimation of what is good for you. You're going to go around in a daze. How many already do? You know the song that goes, I'll be loving you always, and it says, not for just an hour, not for just a day, not for just a year, but always. You're really in for it, not for just an hour, not for just a day, but for at least 6 weeks. Oh, come on. The greatest pleasure of your life is the knowledge you can use all the rest of your life to toss out the junk and feel the resulting lesser weight on yourself as the junk goes out and the lightness of reality comes in. Sure, it's rough and it's tough to ask, who should I be? Because it's going to arouse the revelation you can't be what you've always been. Oh, how many of you have treasured being a know-it-all. How many of you have so confident you know what you're doing? You didn't have to listen to anything outside of your own mind. Everything that was right was there. How many of you have been utterly confident and then went home at the end of that confident day and bawled to yourself? As a matter of fact, the whole world out there is just waiting for the end of the office day, for the end of the show, for the end of the time when the cameras, including the eyes of other people, are on you. People can hardly wait so they can get home and break down and bawl. You did that last night. When you're all by yourself, even if your wife was there, or husband was there. Oh, you were so glad you could turn on the TV show and do all the other distracting things you do to try to push away the horrible day you had out there. You learn here in this room how to abolish bawling. And when you abolish all your need to be on camera, the need for bawling will go away, because there won't be one thing during the day and then a night to face afterward. It'll be daytime 24 hours a day, even while you're asleep. Listen to this, please. Even while you're asleep in your bed, instead of being invaded by the monsters from the world, you will be, and I say this deliberately, not in sentimentality, but as a true description, you will be rocked to sleep in the arms of the only person, the only entity, the only power that cares for you, which is God Himself. You will be rocked to sleep at night, and you'll wake up refreshed instead of waking up terrified of facing that man or that woman or that condition again. You will wake up not hoping, but knowing that everything you meet will be conquered without effort on your part. You'll wake up, I'm illustrating it physically as well as talking to you. You get up in the morning and you go through your morning hours before you leave home or before you take care of the kids or whatever. You will wake up when you know what it means to put being above all else. You'll wake up in the morning, you don't think about the next 5 minutes, or when you first walk into the office and face that person across the desk from yours with whom you had the quarrel yesterday. You don't think about those things. What you know, listen, at the moment you walk out of your bed and you walk across the room, you know at that moment that all is well. At the moment you wake up, you know all is well, because you knew while you were asleep that all is well. There's no crisis to meet at 8 o'clock or 12 o'clock or 5 o'clock or 9 o'clock at night. There's no time involved within you. What you know all night long, and when you woke up and came to consciousness to the exterior world, what you know, how many get up at 5? 6? Hands please. 7? I'm studying. 8? Oh, I better skip to 10. Shall I stop and be merciful? All right. Whatever time you groggily fall out of bed. And remember, you're supposed to put your feet first. You're now a new kind of an awakener. You wake up and you get out of bed. Oh, the marvel of living in heaven on earth. The absolute beauty of now being who you really are. No problems, nothing to fear. Triumph at whatever time you get up, say 6 o'clock. You get up and you know very well, and you know absolutely nothing can shake it. You know it's going to be a great day and into the evening. You know how you know that? I'll tell you how. Because you know it at 8 o'clock. And you've learned how not to lose it to time, to furious thoughts, to dramatic mental movies in which you were the hero. No more of that. No more self-glamorization. No more need to wonder what to do with yourself with that crisis. There's no crisis. No more need to worry about what the decision is going to be to someone toward you on your work, for example, whether you should be promoted or not. All is well at 8 o'clock in the morning, whenever you get up, when you really know all is well at 8 o'clock, you know that all is well for eternity. That goes beyond that day and the week and the 3 years, the 10 years, the 20 years. Now is always now. God doesn't think and live and act in terms of seconds or minutes or 8 o'clock or 10 o'clock or 3 o'clock in the afternoon. There's no clock or calendar in the spiritual world. Human minds going into distortion combined with egotism creates time both for practical purposes sometimes, but also because a person can always hide out and say, if I don't make it today, I'll make it tomorrow. If you say that, I'm going to make it tomorrow, you're never going to make it. And it doesn't make a bit of difference what you do make or don't make tomorrow as long as you're thinking in terms of tomorrow. Listen to me. Salvation, deliverance from your sins, freedom, spirituality is now or never. All right. We went wrong somewhere. Something happened, and I'm going to explain to you and bring out a couple of very critical points that will help your inner development and your understanding that the only thing that matters is the kind of an individual you actually are. What counts is the nature of your thoughts, the nature of your reactions to life. What counts is your spiritual level, what you're trying to raise by being here. Nothing matters but what is true about you. So now you have to find out what is true. You find that out by finding out what is false. There was a man out in the wilderness, trapped in his cabin way back in the heavy snowy mountains, and he was all alone there and snowbound. Town was miles away, and he was cut off from it by the closed paths, the snowbanks all around the cabin. So he was trapped in there for a long time and acquired what is commonly called cabin fever. But we'll call it psychological cabin fever. How many of you suspect you might have it? Come on now, now's your chance to agree with something. Isn't it awful to be snowbound inside your cold self? Yes, it is terrible. But we're going to follow this man trapped inside and find out what happened to him, where he made his mistakes, so that you can withdraw the mistakes you have been making and shatter the psychological cabin fever. You've got a fever, you're hot, sick, and uncomfortable, right? So he was inside there. For a while it was fine. He collected all the things he was going to collect out there in his work. And he'd collected hundreds of pine cones, put on the wall, decorate the wall, make it look pretty, and hopeful if he had any visitors that they would see where you come into this. So that when visitors came next summer, when he thawed out, visitors came, he could picture them all winter of next summer time again. Something happening in the future where visitors would come in and look at all the pretty pine cones displayed on all four walls and say, "Oh, what a marvelous display of pine cones." Did you do this all by yourself? Who else? What do you think? I got an elf around here? Mental movies. How many of you will raise your hand on this, have mental movies in which you are the hero of the little scene or the heroine? Everybody's crowding around, applauding you, like they do in advertising. You get a new car, all the neighbors, the whole neighborhood's going to turn out and applaud you. Give me a chance to recover, please. So he arranged the pine cones to look as good as he thought they would bring the maximum admiration from possible visitors. Meanwhile, because he was busy with his pine cone walls, the snow got snowier, heavier. He didn't notice through the window there how it was coming down in increased volume, how it was piling up all around the cabin. He didn't notice how he could barely open the front door a little bit because the snow was pressing in. He didn't notice how he was getting colder and colder, and time went on and on. He was so busy rearranging the pine cone for the next few months when visitors would come that he did not know what was happening to him. And I want you to pause within yourself right now and realize that you do not know what is happening to you. It's important that you wake up and, for purposes of illustration, that you take your eyes off the wall and your particular pine cones, and you look out the window and you notice how altogether white it is out there, and how higher it was today than it was a few days ago. Noticing how life, the coldness, the chill of this life has been surrounding you, but you didn't notice. Now this is your first lesson today. You're to notice what is happening to you, because you're going to have to reverse the whole process. Time went on, and after a while, he got tired of rearranging the pine cones in one manner. So he did something very dangerous to his life. He decided that the whole arrangement of the way he had put those pine cones, the arrangement was not pretty enough, would not attract maximum applause and admiration. So he took them all down and started all over with a new pattern. Instead of in circles, he put them in squares or triangles, hung them in different ways with colored string. Now, how many times, so you'll understand what I'm talking about, how many times have you simply rearranged the pine cones inside your cabin hoping to attract happiness? You know what I'm talking about. You were so sure, weren't you, of that romance, that change in scenery. You were so sure that reading a different book, you fill in the information as needed as to what the change of pine cone decorations means to you. Where have you been changing them? All within the same cold, lonely cabin. Everything went on. Everything that went on within the kind of a self that you've always had. There was no change in your location. It was just you and your changing patterns of pine cones. Now, I have to tell you that all of you hearing this talk are in that stage. But you're hearing this talk and you can learn how to reverse it, which we'll get into as we go along. Our man in the cabin was just changing things without ever thinking on how we could get out of the cabin altogether and get back to town, which represents true safety, the place you should be living in. He didn't think about bursting out, because at this point a dreadful decision was made by him, which human beings make. And I want you to give special consideration to what I'm going to say in the next few minutes on this point, because it is necessary for you to recognize where you made an inner mistake. His mistake was this. Without realizing what was happening, he did indeed, at the start of the heavier snowfall, he did indeed notice it. Unconsciously, he realized that the snow was getting higher and higher outside the windows. He realized that it had snowed heavily and ceaselessly for several days at a time. He noticed how an attempt to open the front door became a little harder every time he tried to open it. Now here it is. He deliberately blocked out awareness of the danger he was in because he did not want to believe that he was in danger. He wanted to believe that he understood everything that was going on. So, instead of seeing the danger and saying, I better get out of here now before it gets too thick, too heavy, instead of recognizing the danger of the heavy snow and then saying, I better do something about that, he failed to do that because he did not understand and was afraid that if he went out the door and started down the very faint path to get back to town, he was afraid, trembling, shaking, if I try to get back, I won't make it and I will perish. This is what's happened to you. This is what's happened to the whole world in this room. And where else are you going to find it but in this room? Are you going to find out the depths of the error so that it will become clear to you and you could destroy the error and get back to town where you belong. Get back to your spiritual home. Go into this a little deeper. Because he was afraid that he wouldn't be able to get out and back to safety, because he feared he wouldn't be able to make it, he deliberately closed his eyes to the increasing threat, which increased his madness, by the way, his refusal to see and try to understand what was happening to him. He made a horrible mistake, which everyone makes, but there is a solution to it. The mistake was him saying, I can't make it out. And then he went into madness. He went into neurosis. He went into delusion. He went into sickness. And here's what his sickness, which is evil, evil is sickness, sickness is evil. Here's what evil told him to say to himself and then believe what he said to himself. Evil, Satanism, madness, insanity told him to say the following to himself and to believe them. Sir, you're not trapped in here. You want to be here. This cabin is where you should be. This is your true life here in here. Safe from the storms and the snows out there. So, sir, here's what to do. Be happy where you are. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. And then devilish voices continued to talk to him and said to him, you'll understand this now, said to him, look, you are happy where you are. There is no danger. You're safe here. There's no danger. So, prove to yourself that you're safe and happy and content. Sir, spend your time arranging and rearranging the pine cones on the wall. Because one day people are going to come. They're going to look in, they'll be amazed at your artistry, at your talent, at the beauty, and you did it all yourself. No one else here, you did it all yourself. This crazy, violent, brutal world consists of men and women who have fallen for the satanic lie that your cabin is the safe place, your little egotistical life is the safe place. And so, just be active. Do things that are, now this is the devil talking now. Do things that are practical, useful, give you a sense of purpose. Give you a sense of meaning, give you a sense of self-worth. Just think, next summer when the snows melt, you are going to be rewarded for what you did. Maybe the newspapers will come out and the television cameras will come out. And it's warm in summer. We know it's a little rough now, but remember the future. When the snows melt, the TV people are going to come out and they're going to interview you and they're going to take pictures of your artistic work on the wall. Then you'll be someone. You'll know who you are because you're working now to know who you are. All you have to do is obey by continuous instructions. And finally, you will know what to do. Now back again, because I don't want you to forget it. I want you to remember, when you walk out of here, what you're going to do. Now, obviously, there's certain practical, necessary things you're going to do. You're going to drive your car somewhere, whatever. But I want you to be able to discern the difference between an effort to get out of the cabin while you can and merely redecorating the walls. Do you understand now the cause of boredom? It's the same old pine cones with a different ribbon on it. Same old marriage, same old romantic involvement. New business enterprise. Everything has to be the same because you are the same. You're still inside the same cabin, the same person. Having listened to the lie, having listened to what is destroying you, you now inherit the kingdom of darkness and all that goes with it, which is suffering, which is agony, which is angrily insisting. You watch people, you watch yourself. You watch yourself, how you insist that your misery is happiness. Well, let me tell you something. Suffering is not happiness. Suffering is happiness, and is happiness. While today you're busy rearranging the pine cones on the wall, I want you to stop your hand right in the middle of placing that new pine cone in a new place. I'm illustrating this even on the physical level so you'll understand that it involves all your centers, body, mind, emotions, reactions. I want you to be able to choose for yourself, to see for yourself, the very moment you put up that next pine cone in the new arrangement, and I want you to stop your hand before the pine cone reaches the wall. What does that mean? That means you're going to be a thought watcher, an action watcher, a scene watcher as you go around the world. And you're going to catch yourself at the precise moment when you are switching from an old arrangement of your life to a new arrangement. And then you're to remember this talk. You're to remember the illustration of the man trapped in the cabin. And you're to know that that's you. And you're to make a strong, all-out effort to stop all your inner factors, thought, emotion, etc. You're to stop them and give yourself a shock. And give yourself a second shock later in the day, and a third and a fourth. That means you're going to suddenly become conscious, shockingly aware that this talk has been all about you. Well, he was talking about me. And I thought that I was happy, but when he explained in the talk that all I'm doing is rearranging the patterns, and I'm still inside the cabin, when he said that, I began to understand that, because I can think of how I behaved yesterday and last month and 10 years ago. That's true. Nothing has changed. I'm as sick and miserable and mad today as I was 20 years ago when I said, now I've got it and I know what to do. Now I'm going to tell you something. You must go through this process of catching yourself in the very act of putting up the new pattern. And let that lead you to the factual, actual realization that your misery is not happiness. Oh, keep it as simple as that, please. You've got it all mixed up. You do not know, you actually do not know the difference between being happy and being miserable. What makes you happy, according to your present definition of happiness? How soon did it go away? 5 minutes? A couple years? It always goes away. You're always trying a new pattern, aren't you? Once you catch even the first glimpse of the fact that you've been nothing but a foolish hypocrite all your life, once you catch even a little glimpse of that, you have a chance to get out of the cabin and get back to town where you belong. See? Isn't that strange? See, most people don't want to hear this, obviously. You must want to hear it. When you see how lost you always have been, and how you used to teach others the way to the higher way, how much advice you gave with the proper facial expression. Once there is nothing but collapse of yourself within. That means you have allowed God to contact you, and I'll tell you what God will do next. He will tell you to continue to just sit down in that cabin and it's just one room, isn't it? Those mountain cabins, just one room. Just sit somewhere against a wall and just sit there for a long time and just look and see the pattern you now have on the wall. And then realize that it's the 50th, the 100th pattern that you've had. Your enterprises, your ways to be happy, you're moving, and on. God will tell you, and just sit there until the shock is followed by a more severe shock. And that shock is followed by a more severe shock. On and on and on and on and on. And when you do that, at first you will worry that you're going mad, but you're really going sane for the first time because you're understanding the madness of your life. Out of that realization, listen to this, out of the realization that all is lost, and you must realize that all is lost. Out of that realization, within that realization, to use a figure of speech, you will hear the flutter of angel wings coming down to you. You will hear the sound of angel voices, and you know what they will tell you? They will tell you, get to that door and get out of there and get right out into that snow and go, never mind. Don't you listen to anyone who tells you you can't make it. You're not going to make it. You're not going to make it where you are staying in this cabin. You're only going to live in delusion, and you're going to grow sicker and scarier. God is telling you to get out of that cabin, because when you step outside with the intention of getting back home, the angels of God, of mercy and of guidance, will go with you every step. But you've got to step outside and face what you have been avoiding. Remember when you were in the cabin, which particular decoration did you have on the wall? And you said, everything is fine. You went around showing people your new engagement ring. You showed someone else the new paycheck. Everything is going to... If you will let your whole world collapse, that is what is meant by leaving the cabin. It doesn't make any difference how afraid you are. It doesn't make a bit of difference, because you were leaving, listen to this, whether you know it or not, you were leaving your fear behind. It's just that much. The first step will decrease your madness that much. And then as you go along, all along, you'll understand increasingly why you must leave the cabin. That means why you must leave the old life. You must leave yourself in order to find yourself, in order to find newness. Come on, all together, we're going to work all together. We are working all together here. Not listening to anything but the loving command, injunction, direction, order, the loving order. Get out! You get out of your own life right now. When you go out that door, make that representative, you leaving the cabin. And remember everything you heard in this talk. And that will be the angelic voices that will guide you on and on. Good morning.